Hello viewers at home and students. We are here once again to present to you English language on radio and television sponsored by the Ministry of Education, Kaduna State. Today our topic is going to be the complex sentence. Today we will define the complex sentence. We will state the types of sentences that we have under that. We will state the types of clauses we have under the complex sentence. Now we want to begin today's lesson by defining what we mean by complex sentence. From what we have on the slide here, we will define the complex sentence as a kind of sentence made up of one independent or main clause and one dependent or subordinate clause. The simple sentence is an example of the independent clause, as it can stand on its own and make sense or express a complete thought. The dependent or subordinate clause cannot, as it requires the independent clause for help to make sense. The diagram below will illustrate this. Now if you look at the diagram, we have the head of the train here and two coaches. Under it we have the capital I there, representing the independent clause, and then DD for the other two, the coaches, which means that without the head of the train, the body will not move. So without the independent clause, the dependent clause does not make sense. Now this explains what we saw in the diagram above. The head of the train, that is the engine, stands for the independent clause. The engine or the head of the train does not require the coaches to move. It can move independent of them. The coaches, on the other hand, represent the dependent clause. They need the engine to move, as without it, they cannot. This shows the relationship between the independent and dependent clause. It is a form of relationship that is beneficial to the dependent clause because it needs the independent clause to make sense. Now, as per the two types of clauses, the independent clause does not need any further explanation, but the dependent clause will require a more deeper explanation, and this is what we are going to do in this segment of the lesson. Now there are three kinds of dependent clauses or subordinate clauses, as they can be called as well. We have the adverbial clause, we have the adjectival or relative clause, and we have the nominal or noun clause. Now, we've listed three. We will pick one for further discussion. Adverbial clause. Now, the adverbial clause is a dependent clause made up of a group of words performing the same function as an adverb in a sentence. It is a dependent clause made up of a group of words performing the same function as an adverb in a sentence. The adverb, that is the job of the adverb, is to modify verbs, adjectives, and adverbs as well. There are 8 kinds of adverbs. 8 kinds of adverbs. So you have the adverb of place, adverb of time, adverb of manner, adverb of reason, adverb of frequency, adverb of condition, adverb of concession, adverb of degree. Now under each type of the adverb that we have listed, there are a number of words, as you can see. For adverb of place we have off, above, abroad, far, away, back, there, here, outside, downstairs, down. Under adverb of time we have now, yesterday, later, yet, tomorrow, already, tonight, today, then, last, last month, last week, last year. All these denote time. Adverb of manner, we have cheerfully, efficiently, painfully, carefully, slowly, badly, easily, well, quietly. Adverbs of reason, we have something like therefore, hence, because, so, and so on. Adverbs of frequency, we have always, sometimes, often, usually, frequently, rarely, seldom, hardly, hardly ever, never, generally. Adverbs of condition, we have if, unless, until, and so on. Adverbs of concession, we have though, although, even though, while, whereas, or, even if. Adverbs of degree, fully, partially, altogether, quite, to, enough, perfectly. Now, we started with adverbs so as to teach you the adverbial clauses, because we have to start from something you know to progress to something you don't know. Now, let's see how the adverb functions in a sentence. Number one, the children can play here. The children can play here. Now, you find that one word is darkened. That is your adverb of place. Now, we said the function of the adverb is to modify a verb, an adjective, and sometimes other adverbs. Here, the adverb here is modifying the verb can play. You can see it underlined. Number two, we leave for just tomorrow. We leave for just tomorrow. Tomorrow is darkened, meaning that tomorrow is the adverb of time. And this adverb of time, tomorrow, modifies the verb leave. You can see leave is underlined. Number three, Kazi ate her food slowly. Kazi ate her food slowly. Slowly is an adverb here, and the adverb is of manner. Adverb of manner. Slowly modifies the verb ate. You can see it there. Number four, she almost finished the work. She almost finished the work. This is our adverb. It modifies the verb finish. This word almost is the adverb of degree. Adverb of degree. Number five, she likes to watch TV every day. She likes to watch TV every day. The word every day is our adverb of frequency, which modifies the verb likes. It modifies the verb likes. Number six, Esther will not enter the car if Daniel is in it. Esther will not enter the car if Daniel is in it. Our verb here is will not enter. Our adverb here is if. It is the adverb of condition. The adverb here modifies the verb will not enter. Will not enter. Number seven, he died in spite of the doctor's efforts. He died in spite of the doctor's efforts. Our adverb there is in spite of. It is the adverb of concession. It modifies the verb died. Look at it there, died. Now, here you must know what the darkened words are. That is, the part of speech they belong to, in order to know the function they perform. You must know what the darkened words are. Okay? That is, the part of speech they belong to, in order to know the function they perform. Once you know this, the ones below become relatively easy for you to tackle on your own. Now let's take a look at them one by one. Adverbial clause of time. Adverbial clause of time. This states when the action of the main verb occurs. It answers the question, when? When? Now look at sentences 8 through 13. Ngozi slapped Emeka as soon as his back was turned. When did she slap Emeka? As soon as his back was turned. Now this is your adverbial clause of time. Adverbial clause of time. Now, as soon as his back was turned modifies the verb slapped. I left this unmarked deliberately so that those of you viewing at home can take snapshots of this and attempt these questions yourself. You will solve them yourself. So, as soon as his back was turned modifies the verb slapped. Number 9, it is just a week since you left home. It is just a week since you left home. Since you left home is our adverbial clause of time, which modifies the verb is. Is. 10. Aisha must finish her work before she goes home. Aisha must finish her work before she goes home. Before she goes home. It's an adverbial clause of time, and it modifies the verb must finish. Must finish. 11. When Michael visited us, Amina was away. When Michael visited us, Amina was away. When Michael visited us is our adverbial clause of time. It modifies the verb was away. It modifies the verb was away. Olu wrote his exams while lying on a sick bed. Olu wrote his exams while lying on a sick bed. While lying on a sick bed is our adverbial clause of time, which modifies the verb wrote. It modifies the verb wrote. The kids were sleeping when we returned home. The kids were sleeping when we returned home. When we returned home is the same adverbial clause of time, modifying the verb we are sleeping. We are sleeping. Adverbial clause of place. This states where the action of the main verb occurs. It tells you where the action occurs. 14. The children can play wherever they want to. The children can play wherever they want to. Now note, when we're dealing with verbs, we said the children can play here. The word here tells us the place. Now it is the same sentence. The children can play wherever they want to. So wherever they want to is our adverbial clause of place, modifying the verb can play. Can play. Now you take note that in a previous lesson, my colleague Mercy taught you about verbs, where she said there are main verbs and there are auxiliary verbs. Here, the auxiliary verb can is helping the main verb play. Number 15. Where the students went, there were no bookshops. Where the students went, there were no bookshops. Our adverbial clause of place is where the students went. Our verb here is were. Were. 16. Wherever the director checked, she couldn't find her purse. Wherever the director checked, she couldn't find her purse. Now, our adverbial clause is wherever the director checked. And then our verb is couldn't find. Couldn't find. So, the adverbial clause here is modifying the verb couldn't find. 17. The lawyers went wherever they could find work. So wherever they could find work is our adverbial clause of place. And then our verb is went. Went. Next slide. Adverbial clause of concession. This always implies that the main statement is true in spite of opposing circumstances. The main sentence will remain true in spite of opposing circumstances. Number 18. Though you may say so, it is not true. Though you may say so, it is not true. So, our adverbial clause of concession is though you may say so. But our verb is 19. The messenger worked hard though he wasn't paid well. The messenger worked hard though he wasn't paid well. That remains our adverbial clause of concession, the darkened part of it, and our verb is worked. 20. Even if he is weak in class, he manages to pass his exams. Even if he is weak in class, he manages to pass his exams. Our verb here is pass, and that is modified by even if he is weak in class. 21. Whereas Rebecca is gentle, her brother is rather wild. Whereas Rebecca is gentle, her brother is rather wild. Whereas Rebecca is gentle, our adverbial clause of concession is remains our verb that is modified by the adverbial clause. Next slide. Adverbial clause of manner. They tell us how the action of the main verb took place, how it took place. Look at number 22. The driver drove as though he was mad. The driver drove as though he was mad. As though he was mad remains our adverbial clause of manner. Our verb that is modified is the word drove. 23. John does it exactly as his father does. John does it exactly as his father does. Adverbial clause of manner, darkened. Our verb does. 24. Please prepare the soup exactly as I taught you. Please prepare the soup exactly as I taught you. Our adverbial clause of manner is exactly as I taught you, and our verb is prepare. Prepare. 25. They treated him as though he was a criminal. They treated him as though he was a criminal. Our adverbial clause of manner is as though he was a criminal, and our verb is treated. So the adverbial clause of manner modifies the verb treated. Next slide. Adverbial clause of reason. Now this explains and gives reasons for the main idea to occur. It explains and gives reasons for the main idea to occur. It explains why someone does something and why something happens. Why someone does something and why something happens. 26. I lent him the book. Why? Because he needed it. Because he needed it modifies the verb lent. 27. As John is the youngest, I took care of him. As John is the youngest, adverbial clause of reason. Our verb, took care. 28. Since we lived near the sea, we often go swimming. As we lived near the sea, we often go swimming. Our adverbial clause of reason is since we lived near the sea. And the verb it modifies is often go. 29. As long as you are here, we will study together. As long as you are here, we will study together. As long as you are here, adverbial clause of reason. Our verb here is will study. Will study. 30. Those roses are growing well because I took care of them. Those roses are growing well because I took care of them. Our adverbial clause of reason is because I took care of them. Because I took care of them modifies the verb are growing. 31. I watered the roses because mother told me to. I watered the roses because mother told me to. Adverbial clause of reason, because mother told me to. And our verb that is modified by this is watered. Watered. Now, water is a noun which is modified by adding ed at the end of it. So it becomes a verb. Next slide. Adverbial clause of condition. This gives the circumstances under which the action of the main clause will take place. 32. If it rains, we will not go out. If it rains, it's our adverbial clause of condition. Will not go is our verb. 33. She will come if you invite her. She will come if you invite her. If you invite her is our adverbial clause of condition. Our verb that is modified by this is will come. 34. You won't pass unless you study hard. Unless you study hard is our adverbial clause of condition. And this modifies the verb won't pass. 35. That's Aisha unless I am mistaken. That's Aisha unless I'm mistaken. Here, our adverbial clause of condition is unless I am mistaken. Now, you notice that's an enclitic form that shortened the whole of that structure, that is. So, that's becomes our verb. Unless you give me the keys, you will not be paid. Unless you give me the keys, that's our adverbial clause of condition, which modifies the verb will not be paid. That's our verb, will not be paid. 37. She will take this medicine whether she likes it or not. She will take this medicine whether she likes it or not. Whether she likes it or not, adverbial clause of condition. Will take, that is the verb modified by the adverbial clause of condition. 38. You will be forgiven on the condition that you don't do it again. You will be forgiven on the condition that you don't do it again. Here, on the condition that you don't do it again, adverbial clause of condition, which modifies the verb will be forgiven. Will be forgiven. Next slide. Now, our purpose for teaching this is to prepare you for the question such as will be given below, should they appear in the forthcoming exams you are about to sit for. 1. What is the grammatical name given the underlined expression? And 2. What is its function? Now, this normally appears in the exams that you're going to write within the comprehension. Take number 36 as an example. Unless you give me the keys, you won't be paid. Now, to answer the questions above using number 36, we will say that 1, that is 1. What is the grammatical name given the underlined expression? The answer is going to be adverbial clause of condition. And 2, what is its function? What is its function? It modifies the verb will not be paid. That gives you your answer straight. Now, you'll observe that I have deliberately left the verbs modified by these clauses unmarked. This is because you will identify them and solve them yourselves at home. Next slide. Assignment. Write short notes with relevant examples too on the following: adverbial clause of degree, and 2, adverbial clause of frequency. Number 2, what is the grammatical name given the darkened expressions from number 1 to 38? What is the grammatical name given the darkened expressions from number 1 to 38? What is their function? Number 2. I'll repeat this again for the purpose of those listening in radio. Write short notes with relevant examples too on the following: 1, adverbial clause of degree. 2, adverbial clause of frequency. Number 2, subsection 1. What is the grammatical name given the darkened expressions from number 1 to 38? And number 2, what is their function? Now, you will observe that 2 of those adverbial clauses were not treated. Those ones are for you to do at home, and I expect to see you answer them and send those answers to me for proof as to whether they are correct or not. And if you have to send those answers to me, you will send them to Mr. Emmanuel Jatau, and my number is 080-5731-3044. I'll repeat this again. Mr. Emmanuel Jatau, 080-5731-3044. Thank you very much.